everybody, my name is Amanda Betcher. Welcome to my second week oral presentation. I am doing the It's Not Just About Salivating Dogs, which is 3.1, and it's related to Ivan Petrovich Pavlov and classical conditioning. The study is basically about learning by association and how Pavlov discovered the classical conditioning by using dogs and their conditioned reflexes. So a little bit about Pavlov. So when he first started out, he was a Hi everybody. Welcome to my week 2 oral presentation. My name is Amanda Betcher and I will be doing It's Not Just About Salivating Dogs 3.1. This research was conducted by Ivan Pavlov and it's related to classical conditioning, and it's a study about learning by association and how Pavlov discovered classical conditioning through dogs and their conditioned reflexes. So a little bit about Pavlov. I found it very interesting that he started out as a physiologist researching digestion in dogs, and what he learned was that, well, first of all, he won a Nobel Prize for his research, and he would measure the amount of saliva that was produced when giving a stimulus. And so what they did was they took a tube and surgically implanted it into the dog's cheek, and they would gather all of the saliva, and they would measure how quickly the dog produced saliva as well as the amount that was produced. And so the dogs, they found that different foods produced different amounts of saliva. So soft food and hard food produced different amount of saliva. And what interested Pavlov the most is that the dogs did not need to learn how much they needed to produce. The body just knew it and did it. So he noticed that the dogs were producing saliva at various times. So at first it was when the food arrived, and then it was after the food arrived, and then when they could smell the food, and then also they started producing saliva when there was no food there. There was no stimulus for them to cause them to produce it. So this led Pavlov to the discovery of classical conditioning. At the time, it was the early 1900s, and psychology was not that stable of a science yet. So it was really a risk for him to switch to psychology from what he was doing before. And because he knew that the dogs were salivating prior to the food coming. So they were salivating in preparation of the food arriving. So this is how he stumbled upon conditioning reflex. And so he was able to change from one career to another. And I felt that was very interesting that he was able to pivot and do very well for himself and discover something that changed psychology up until now, and probably further into the future. So Pavlov theorized that the dogs were recognizing that specific routines prior to being fed, and those routines were associated with food. As a result, the dogs then produced the saliva. So now there's two different reflexes. First is unconditional reflex. That's inborn, and you don't have to learn it. Just like salivating or blinking your eyes, any other thing that your heartbeat, we don't have any control over those. The second one is conditioned reflexes. And those are things that we learn, and we learn these, like we recognize routines, and same with the dogs, like the dogs recognize the routines of the research prior to being fed. So each reflex has a stimulus and a response both resulting in the same outcome. In the dogs, it's salivating. So we have an unconditional stimulus, which is the food, that causes the unconditioned response, which is salivating. Then we have a conditional response, a conditional stimulus, which is learning that the research routines, and then caused the conditional response, which was salivation. And so Pavlov wanted to study these conditioned reflexes. How did the dogs create this reflex that wasn't there before? So Pavlov understood that when he provided the dogs with food and any other kind of stimulus or stimuli, that it would become, and once it became associated with food, then it became a condition. So in the dog's brain, it would signal that food was coming. And prior to that association, the dogs would not think about the food if they were given this stimuli. And it wouldn't produce saliva. And so that is called a neutral response. When something does not produce a reaction or any kind of response. So like my dog has been conditioned to walking outside. So when I go outside to take him for a walk, I sit on my steps, I tie my shoes. So whenever I sit on the steps to tie my shoes, my dog thinks he's going for a walk, so he gets all excited. So what Pavlov did was he tested the dog. So once his research started, he took the dogs, put them in a soundproof lab to eliminate any outside stimuli that might interfere with his results. He was able to control the stimulus with the dogs, and he used unconditioned stimulus to create the saliva, and food being a natural reflex for producing that saliva. So Pavlov then introduced a metronome. So when he provided the food, he also provided the sound of the metronome. So he did this for several times, and then once the dogs started hearing the metronome, they began to produce the saliva. And so Pavlov, he worked on other sorts of stimulus, one being a lemon solution. So he would provide the dogs with a lemon solution that produced a lot of saliva, and then he would also at the same time provide the smell of vanilla. So after 20 repetitions, when they gave the dog the smell of vanilla, the dog would then start producing saliva. So Pavlov then, okay, so we have got the sense of sound, smell, what about sight? So he experimented with a rotating object. So whenever the dog was fed, the rotating object would appear to the dog, and after several repetitions, 15 to 20, they took the dog food away, and when the dog saw the rotating object, they would begin to produce saliva. Now, so that takes care of all of the senses. So Pavlov found that classical conditioning is related to the reflex conditioning, which is out of our control. Any reflex that we have can be conditioned. So let's say blinking. We can condition ourselves to blink when the doorbell rings, or to blink when we eat specific foods. So one example that you can do for yourself is you go into a room, you need a bell, a mirror, and a room that can go completely dark when the lights are off. Okay, my computer wanted to restart. I don't want to do that right now. And so you have a bell, a mirror, and a room that can go completely dark. So what you do is you have the lights on, you ring the bell, and immediately shut the lights off. You wait 15 seconds, then you turn the lights back on, and you wait 15 seconds again. Your eyes have to adjust. So the lights are on 15 seconds, and then you do it again. ring the bell, shut the lights off, wait 15 seconds. You do that, that sequence about 15 to 20 times. And then all you have to do is ring the bell, and your eyes should dilate. And that is a conditioned stimulus. So the theory of classical conditioning is also called the Pavlovian conditioning. And it's beneficial to everyone to be aware of what it is and understand it, because it is the basis of many human behaviors, such as phobias, emotions, anxieties, and arousals. So if we're aware of those things, we can understand then why they're happening, and if we want to change them, we can just condition ourselves to not have those reactions. So one thing that I found really interesting was that ranchers are able to condition wild animals, such as wolves and coyotes, to not eat specifically their sheep. So what they did was the ranchers fed the wolves and coyotes mutton, which is sheep, but they put a chemical in there that made the coyotes and wolves become very sick and nauseated after eating the mutton. So they did this several times, and then they tested it by putting the sheep and the wolves and coyotes in the same vicinity, and the coyotes did not attack the sheep. Once they smelled them, they were aware, okay, this last time this made me sick, I'm not doing this, I'm not going to eat this sheep. They would run away. And another thing I found very interesting is they're talking about in the future that we can condition our immune system to be strengthened by listening to immune strengthening music. So if we can condition ourselves when we listen to this music, our immune system will boost itself. Then when we need it, we can boost our immune system just by listening to music. So one thing that I think everybody's aware of is our use of cell phones. When we use we are conditioned by our cell phone. And so according to Mike Brooks, with the classical conditioning to our phones, when we hear a chime that is similar to ours, we automatically reach for our phone, right? I mean, we've all done it. We hear it. Is that yours? Is that mine? I don't know whose it is, you know? So, so we have unconditioned reflex, which is we receive a message. It makes us happy. Unconditioned stimulus is hearing the cell phone chime. Unconditioned response is checking your phone, receiving information, and feeling happy. So the conditioned reflex is the conditioned stimulus, we hear the chime, and that sounds like yours, and you feel happy. And then you reach for your phone automatically. Now, if it's yours or not, you know, if you might feel like, oh, not mine, right? So I feel like that's part of this cell phone issue that we're having right now, is this we are classically conditioned to become happy when we think our phone is someone's reaching out to us via text or notifications or what have you. So I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about Pavlov. I found him very interesting and always have. I look forward to watching your videos. Have a good day.